Okay, the last lab we looked at staph, or we've looked at some of these things. I want you to also look at strep. So I've got two labs, differentiation of staph and differentiation of strep, and I decided to put strep together with respiratory because of all the strep infections, so just FYI. All right, so we're looking at strep and hemolysis, because that's one of the primary tests for strep. I'll tell you that, what is important. But hemolysis means the bursting or lysis, splitting up of red blood cells, and it is carried out by some of these organisms to feed from the high nutrient contents of the cell, or to reduce the oxygen concentration in the surroundings. There are many different hemolytic enzymes. There are three basic types of hemolysis that we look at, and alpha, beta, and gamma. Beta hemolysis is the most important one, and that means that this particular organism, and staph can do it, and certain streps can do it, but it means that, and looking at this plate, and I've got it, what it does is beta hemolysin enzymes rupture the red blood cell, number one, and digest the hemoglobin that's in that cell, okay? And they release the cell. You get release from the cell that's iron and the amino acid building blocks, but as a result, the growth of beta hemolytic colonies show what's called complete clearing. It will absolutely take these red blood cells and clear them out. The most potent strep pyogenes does it. Some strep galactiaceae do it. Staph aureus can also do it. So just, when we look at that stuff. But beta hemolytic, think about what it does if you got a strep throat, which is what strep pyogeny causes strep throat. Think about what it's going to do. If it can do this to just a red blood cell, this is why strep throats are so nasty. Okay. Alpha hemolysis means that we have lysed the red blood cell, but we don't have the ability to break that hemoglobin up. We can't completely digest the hemoglobin like the beta hemolytics did. So instead, the hemoglobin is modified to hemoverdin, which is a greenish compound. So instead of seeing this clearing, we see this greening. The one that's really notorious for this is strep pneumo. Okay, so there it is. You can see this green versus complete clearing. Okay. Then we have gamma hemolysis, which means we don't have hemolysis. This is a non-hemolytic strep. It doesn't have any of the enzymes to lyse the red blood cell, and you're not going to see anything on it. And so these guys tend to be non-pathogenic. And if you look at it, I've got a plate with all three of them on there, and you can definitely see this. This is the alpha with just the greening. You can see that green. You can see the beta with that complete clearing around it, and then gamma with nothing, with no change. Okay, so that's the comparison. So we want to look at these organisms, and then we want to figure out which one it is. So there was a microbiologist, Rebecca Lansfield, made it her life's work to categorize the species of Streptococcus based on the antigens on their cell surface. And basically, she came up with this very organized scheme that separates these organisms on their ability to cause hemolysis, and basically looked at their surface antigens. And she divided the streps into groups A through O based on these surface antigens. Now, the ones that primarily cause disease are group A, group B, group C, group D, and we'll kind of go through these. But this is how we look at it. And when you sit there and say group A strep, we'll talk about it. That is strep pyogenes. in the statement. Okay, that's GAS, Group A strep. And we know it's beta hemolytic, and we know it's a problem. So this is how we do classify them. So Group A strep is Streptococcus pyogenes, and this particular group we can easily demonstrate that is again by one doing that hemolytic test. But what's unique with strep pyogenes is that their sensitivity to bacitracin, a particular antibiotic, and basically what you look at, and I'll show you, it's the presence of a zone of inhibition around that disc called the A disc. Basically is definitive for group A. The only species in this group is strep pyogenes. So a couple things. Group A strep, it is Streptococcus pyogenes. It is bacitracin sensitive. It is beta hemolytic. End of statement. And this is the worst strep that we have. So we want to be able to recognize it. When we talk, so if you nothing else, group A strep pyogenes, bacitracin sensitive. All of them are bacitracin sensitive, and so we can figure this. And then the bacitracin disc, which has an A on it to represent that lovely little antibiotic. And if it's sensitive to it, we know it's a group A strep. Group B streps, this is beta hemolytic, again, Streptococcus agalactiaceae. Commonly a normal flora in the vaginal area, colonizes it, but during pregnancy it can overgrow and it can infect newborns and cause a fatal meningitis. This is why it's more commonly called GBS or Group B strep, and obstetricians will test pregnant women during their last trimester for Group B strep and treat it with antibiotics to get rid of it before labor and delivery to reduce the risk to the unborn child. I can't tell you the number of Group B strep tests I've done. Okay, so it's very important. You don't want this baby delivered vaginally when mom has Group B strep growing. Okay, because it does commonly colonize the vaginal area. Group C strep is a type of strep that causes, a wide range of diseases from mild sore throats to severe sepsis and endocarditis. It's primarily treated with antibiotics like penicillin or amoxicillin. The most common one you can see is SDSE. Yeah. Streptococcus disgalactiae subspecies equisimilis. Yeah. But the bottom line is that it can live naturally on your skin or in your throat without making you sick, but it can cause an infection when it enters the body or gets out of control. So again, immunosuppressed patients, when you've taken, on a chemo or you say something like this lives normally, but when something occurs, it can get out of control, which is, you've heard me say it 14,000 times, right? All right, Group D strep. They primarily inhabit the gastrointestinal tract, and you can see Streptococcus equinus, Streptococcus bovis, cows, horses. For us, the Galolicticus is a known cause of endocarditis and bacteremia. It is heavily linked to gastrointestinal problems, particularly colorectal cancer. So doctors often recommend bowel cancer screening if this bacteria is detected. So if you get a gastrointestinal problem and you get a stool culture and we grow this out, then the doctors often recommend that you need to get a cancer screen because of this. Okay. Enterococci. This is a little interesting because when I was starting out in the lab field, Enterococcus was classified as group D strep. Now they have decided, because of they've done genetic reclassification, and they have now called it the Enterococcus genus. So what can you say? It is the major cause of urinary tract infections. Okay, it is a major cause. I mean, obviously, E. coli is the major, but it is really bad for causing UTIs. Enterococcus faecalis, Enterococcus faecium. They are highly resistant. They survive in very harsh environments, including extreme temperatures and high salt. That is a problem in healthcare settings where they are a leading cause of pneumococcal infections, UTIs, and wound infections because they are just hard to kill. They're a very hardy particular genus of organisms. Group F strep is a type of gram-positive bacteria found in the mouth, gastrointestinal tract, and the genital area. They often fall under Streptococcus aeruginosus group and are known for causing these localized pus-forming abscesses. Okay. Group G strep, I tell you, this does go on, is a type of bacteria that lives on the skin. Again, normal flora, skin, throat, gastrointestinal tract, genital tract. It's often harmless, but it can cause mild sore throats or go to life-threatening conditions like sepsis, cellulitis, pneumonia, primarily in the older adults and those with underlying health conditions, as usual. So if you get an underlying health condition, it really does set you up. Now, here's one of the guys that is outside that grouping, and that is strep pneumo. It is not part of the letter classification system. So in standard classical grouping, it is primarily categorized as an alpha hemolytic strep, or it's placed into strep viridans group, but it is a alpha hemolytic strep, as I mentioned, and I showed you that was strep pneumo with the alpha, but it's not, it doesn't have a grouping. And the interesting thing is we can detect it in the lab by putting a disc of Optocin, which is a antibiotic, and it's called a P disc, P in the Optocin, and it will, if you get a clearing of 15 millimeters or bigger using your lovely little disc diffusion, that's definitive for strep pneumo. And again, I kind of got this. So this is what the strep typing kit looks like. Again, it's really easy. You take your little specimen, you put your little dots out, each one of the A, B, C, D, G, and then you introduce a little bit of your specimen to each one of those, and you swirl it around and you rock it. And in a minute or two, it's going to agglutinate if it's one of these things. And this one is showing a positive test for group E strep, a galactiaceae. You can see the agglutination or the clumping. Okay, and so that's how we test for Streptococcus.